All right. It takes a little bit to get everything kind of tuned up and see how we do. So yeah, any questions for me at all?
No, I think I'm okay.
Think you're good? Okay.
Breathe deeply and take a big breath. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is the stuff it's sort of a companion to your lesson. So
Okay.
people see the lesson, they'll whatever you kind of answer here, help them kind of translate what was going on.
Kind of explain what I was going on in the classroom, my thinking behind it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So let's start from the top, and these ones should be kind of easy. When we get to the shifts in the CCSS, let me know if you want to stop for those.
Okay, perfect. Take a little peek. Sure.
All right, so this is more for the lesson. So, so we want to understand the decisions you made in planning for this lesson and how it fits into the unit and year. So how does this lesson connect to and build on students' prior knowledge and skills? What was taught before this lesson and what will come after it? Discuss the sequence of lessons that surround this one lesson.
Okay, so the close read strategy my students have done before. At our school, we do close reads about once every 9 weeks. Every time students do the close reads, they get better and better at them. So today, what you saw in the lesson today was the second day of the close read. Yesterday, we started it, and I looked at the document with the kids. We talked about what they saw to get into the document a little bit. They read the document individually yesterday, and then I read it out loud with them yesterday so they could get some fluency with the words and the understanding of the document. Then today was a questioning day. So I asked a series of questions to the kids to help them get into the document and understand the document. And then on day 3 of the lesson, tomorrow I'll be asking the kids, I'll be giving them a writing prompt. And then they have to answer that question, and everything goes back to the text. And it's all based on the evidence and reasoning from the text that we discussed over the last 2 days.
Perfect. That was great. All right. Is the text used in this lesson part of a sequence of texts designed to build skills and knowledge? If so, please give example of other texts that form the sequence.
Yes, it is part of a sequence of texts that we've used. In most lessons, we use a lot of different primary sources. We do different document analysis. So in this particular lesson, we've already analyzed a few photographs. By the time this mini unit's done, they'll have analyzed some So by the time the unit's done, we'll have analyzed some political cartoons, looked at some other primary sources, and earlier this week we read Abigail Adams' letter to her husband John, and it's her famous Remember the Ladies letter, which is a great letter that got the kids into the unit.
Excellent. All right, so let's talk about the standards targeted in this lesson. What did you do to make the lesson reflect the full intent of that standard?
So I think the close read strategy, I think it really hits the main standards for Common Core. It hits the Core Action 1, 2, and 3. The whole basis of a close read is picking a really rich, complex text that's above grade level. We want the kids to discuss the text, analyze the text, and they're going in and reading that text multiple times to get a really deep understanding of the text. So I think where it addresses Core Action 1 is at the heart of a close read. Then with Core Action 2 is about questioning strategies. So purposefully asking a series of questions that could address difficult parts of a text, that get the kids into understanding the true meaning of the text. The kids have to go back and reread that text multiple times in order to understand it. And then Core Action 3 then is the grouping and the discussion, and the kids are put into small groups so they have the opportunity to go back into the text, work together as a group to come to some understandings. As I'm walking around the classroom, and that's what I did today, kind of seeing where students were understanding what they were looking at, or if they needed a little bit more help understanding that part. I could kind of guide them to where they needed to go. And then we come back to a whole group, a whole class, so I can then know, did they really understand the text? Did they not? And then I get a feel for, how they felt about the text. So I think this particular strategy, is a great strategy that addresses Common Core.
All right, that's a good answer. All right, so this is the last question of this section.
Okay.
Which of the core action indicators do you think this lesson best exemplifies, and why?
I believe that the close read probably best exemplifies core action 1, probably 1A, because 1A really talks about students reading, discussing, writing about the text. And because we've picked a text that is interesting for students, that has to do with the unit of study that we're doing, the kids are going into that text multiple times. They're discussing the text as they're making inquiry about it and analyzing it. And then at the end, they have a writing component. So the main part then of a close read is at the end, I'm asking them a question and they have to write an argumentative paragraph defending their position with a claim, and everything goes back to evidence and reasoning based on the text. So they have to use the text to answer their question. So I think that is the biggest part of that. And then I think also it addresses core action 2 with the specific questioning strategies, because we're asking kids specific questions about the text. Today, the first question I talked about today was a question about them and their. And the students really were having some difficulty trying to figure out, were they talking about men? Were they talking about women? And then we had to go back into the text and try and figure out, use the text then to try and figure that tricky part out. So I think, asking specific questions as well. So, yeah.
Excellent. All right, so now we'll get into the shifts. We are interested in how the shifts required by the CCSS are being incorporated into your instruction. Discuss how this lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
Clark, please report to the office.
Sorry.
That's okay. So I do believe one of the main shifts with the CCSS standards is students using nonfiction text. We go to that shift, so they're using document analysis and social studies, which fits in perfectly with a social studies teacher in a social studies classroom. And that nonfiction text can be what we were looking at today. It can be a speech, it can be a letter, it can be a photograph or paintings. But today we were working on the speech, the Declaration of Sentiments speech. So I think it really addresses that. First of all, I do believe then also students are really engaged in the text. They're focused on the text. They're going back into the text multiple times. And so it really gets the kids to have a deep understanding of the text that they're working with. It requires students to use Tier 1 and Tier 2 vocabulary words, those academic words that they may not ordinarily have the opportunity to use. With group discussion, they're recognizing other students' points of views and adding to that, or they might have maybe, I don't agree with that, and talk about that as well. Questions are text dependent and text specific that we're asking. So students have to focus on the text at hand. They can't use background knowledge and bring other things in. So it really makes students then focus on this particular text that we're doing.
Great. All right, so how did you teach the content of this lesson prior to the CCSS? What is the same and what is different?
I love this particular Declaration of Sentiments. I think it's really juicy. So I've taught it before and used it before. But before the shifts, I would have giving the students all the background information so they understand the text, what's going on around the text, explain the entire text to them. So then the kids would read the text and ask questions, and they'd give me what I would think would be these awesome answers, but they're just regurgitating the information that I've given them. So I think with the shifts with Common Core, I don't front load any information. I don't give them any background information about this particular text. They read it, we read it together, then we delve into questions so they get to analyze the text. They get to discover the text for themselves. And I think they really get a really deep understanding of the text. And with the answers being very text specific and text dependent, I think that it really levels. It really levels.
IEP in Ms. McDonough's room is starting now. All teachers for Ms. McDonough's IEP meeting D201.
Now I think that the students, they do the work. Before, I would have done most of the work and most of the talking, and now the students do the work. They're doing the inquiry. I'm more of a facilitator in the classroom, kind of facilitating small group discussions, bringing it back to the whole to make sure that they've got the basic understanding of the text. But they're discovering the text for themselves, so they really own the text, by the time we're done with this. So it's made a big difference. I think one of the times when the kids said to me, well, we're doing all the work now, and so they do. I mean, they really have a deep understanding by the time that we're done. I love it. This is a fun lesson, the strategy that we're doing right now. I really like it.
Very, very cool. All right. So, student engagement is critical to the work of CCSS. We want to understand how you ensure that all students have the opportunity to productively engage in the work of the lesson. How did or do you support all students in working with grade level text?
So with this particular strategy, all the students can get into the text at their level. So a higher level student is going to read the text. My lower level kids are also going to read the text, and they're going to attack that text and understand the text at their level. They're going to read it first on their own, so if they're not quite fluent with it or don't understand it, they're going to hear me read it again. So they're going to get more exposure to the text. Every time they go back into that text to answer a question, they're reading it again and reading again. They're discussing the text. And because they're in small groups, the groups are heterogeneously grouped. So I have high, lows, and mids. My ELLs are in those groups. My special needs students are in those groups. So they all get to bring something to the table. They all get to discuss it. The interesting thing that we found with this particular strategy is that our higher level kids, they struggle with this more than our lower level kids because they're used to skimming something once and being done, and they have so much background knowledge and information that they're used to being able to answer questions with all of that, but not maybe focusing on the text at hand. In this particular document, everything goes back to this text. So it really levels a playing field for everybody, so everyone has the same access to text. The thing we also notice with our lower level kids, they're used to reading text closely and deeply for understanding. So they really feel successful with the group as well. The questions are designed so there's multiple places in the text to find answers. So there's not just one, there's multiple answers. Answers can be inferential. So my higher level kids can get those inferential answers. My lower level kids can find those very concrete answers that are right there in the text. So everyone can contribute to the conversation. When it comes to the writing piece, I do have some scaffolding for writing, some different graphic organizers and things to help kids, with their thinking and their process with the argumentative writing piece at the end. So, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. How do you know that students were able to successfully respond to the text-dependent questions and tasks with precision? Did students acquire the literacy skills addressed in this lesson? What did or do you do for students who did not acquire the literacy skills addressed in this lesson?
So because they're in small groups, I'm constantly circulating around the room, especially on discussion days, but I do it on writing days as well, helping my students. At this point, especially in the school year, I really know my students' needs, so I know which students need more of a push or which students need more help. Because they're in a group, they do get the help of each other. If they don't understand something with this particular group discussion, they can hear it and go back into the text and go, oh, okay, I understand that now. And circulating around and listening to group discussion, I'm going to know if they've understood the question being asked, if they've understood the text. Students are annotating their document, so I can also see by their annotations if they're making connections and understandings. And then after we have small group, we come back to whole class discussion as well. So in that whole class discussion, I can also see if they have a good understanding of the text. And every time we do a close read or we work with another primary source, we're constantly working on these same skills of understanding text, ways to figure text out, working on specific Tier 1, Tier 2 vocabulary to help students access text. So it's a constant, it's going on constantly with different lessons, including this one. So if they don't quite get it this time, we're working towards that fluency and independency in their reading.
All right. So this is the last question of the section, and then we're pretty much on the home stretch here.
Okay.
So which behaviors from Core Action 3 did the students best exemplify in this lesson? What actions have you taken as a teacher to make that happen?
I think as far as Core Action 3 goes, probably 3B, requiring precision with student answers and evidence. When they answer a question, they have to delve back into that text. With the text, we provided line numbers. So when students answer, they say on line number 32, and then we can all go back to the same place in the text. So we're all right there when students are discussing their answer or what they found, and they've got to go back to the evidence, bring it back to the evidence. How do you know this? Where does it say that in the text? So I think the strategy really addresses 3B a lot.
Okay. And this is the last section here, the last two. Great instructors are continuously learning. We want to understand what you celebrate in this lesson and what you'd improve on. So reflecting on this lesson, what worked particularly well and what would you do differently?
I think that students, working in small groups, we're always working on that discussion piece. I always have students that try and take over discussions and students that like to kind of hang back. And so it's always trying, I think, to put students together that will work together. If I know I have a particularly shy student, it's trying to get that student to participate in the conversation, to be a part of that, because I think a lot of times they don't think that their thinking is valuable, but it really is. And it's trying to get them to understand that they've got incredible things to add to a conversation, whether it's small group or whole class. So I'm always trying to find ways to, bring those kids, into a discussion. I'm always amazed at the great answers that kids come up with, because in a close read, I always do it first. I know the document, I go through the document, answer the questions, annotate it, figure out answers, and the kids always come up with answers that I didn't think of. They'll find a spot in the document, but it could be this, and I'm always, when you go back and look at it, you're right. And so that is one of the great things that I love about this as well, that they always find other points of access in the document.
All right. And this is the last one, and this you might have overlapped on stuff like this, but you just let me know if you think of anything. Were there any surprises or unexpected student behaviors or reactions?
Because my students have done this strategy before, they really kind of know, get your text out, we're going to work in a small group. So they're pretty familiar with how this goes. I think I touched on it before, with answers. I don't know that anything really unexpected happened with this group today. They dig into the text. It's almost like they're detectives almost with this strategy. They like to get into it, and I think if you approach it the right way, that you can do it. Because their comment when I gave this to them yesterday and we read it, this is really, really long. And I think originally they're thinking, there's no way we can get through this text. It's too long to read. I just don't want to engage. But when you get them involved in the questions, you find that they just want to dig in and they want to figure out what it means. And sometimes they need a push here and there to kind of get them going in the right direction. But they really do want to understand it. And I think that it might even be a surprise for them, but they forget about how long the text was. And then pretty soon we've gotten through 2.5 pages of text and, we went through the whole text already. So I think, that might be a surprise maybe more for them, as thinking as the lesson goes too. But they always like to dig right in, and which is, I think, always surprising for me, their willingness to jump in and go, let's try it and figure it out. So, yeah.
All right. Well, that was great. Pretty easy, right?
Okay. Shoo!
That was wonderful.